So I'm going to walk you through how to get everything set up for MainStage. I've already got my synthesizer controller plugged in here through my USB bank into my MacBook. So everything we're going to do is basically just going to show you how I do my setup process through MainStage. So the first step is we need to go into MainStage, which I'll open your most recent concert here. And everything I'm routing to, by the way, goes through. I've got a Focusrite Scarlett 2i2. I use that for my digital audio interface. And then from that, my signal path goes out to in a live workspace situation, going to a mixer. I'd go from my Focusrite out to a DI box and a stereo split DI box, so I have left and right compatibility and stereo imaging through the sound system. Mono will work just fine for you as well, but if you've got the ability to split to stereo and take up, and you have the channels available, it's always a good idea to do that. So the first step here when I load MainStage and I go to full screen is I'm going to go over to layout in the top left and click on that. Then from here, I'm going to select my sampler keyboard. Very simple from here. So sampler, I selected this synthesizer, and then I go up here to assign, and then I click any button on the synth that I wish to assign it to. So I am going to click the lowest C on my MIDI keyboard. And once I do that, it's going to automatically tag all of this as the controller itself in the channel that it needs to go through. After I'm finished with that, I deselect assign. If your sampler keyboard is different than this, let's say that you've got a 49 key controller, you just come over here to settings. The name on it automatically is sampler, since I assigned it that when I created your template file. The number of keys here, you can double click and input however many. So let's say you've got a 49 key controller. So we got 49 keys, and click enter, and then it automatically adjusts it to be 49 keys. I'm going to leave this at 25 since that's what my controller is. And then similar to the assign feature over here that we clicked on for this parameter for this synthesizer, I can click on learn my lowest key and hit the lowest key of the keyboard. That way you don't have to guess if it's C1, C2, C0, whatever it happens to be. And that's all you have to do for that. And it's a similar situation. You do the same exact thing down here for your actual synthesizer. So start by clicking on this keyboard here. Come on over here to assign over hardware input. Click on assign, and then hit a key on the keyboard. And then come down here to settings and adjust the number of keys that you have. Most controllers are usually, synth controllers, MIDI controllers are 61 keys. So that's just a stock standard template that I've been using as a 61 key controller. Again, you can click the learn feature on the lowest key and then strike the lowest note or key that's on your MIDI controller, and then deselect learn after that. Once that's all finished, everything should be good to go. You'll be able to go back to edit, and then your keyboards will be completely mapped and ready to go. So for example, if I click on my MIDI controller here, it looks like both of my synthesizers in this MainStage file are selected to go to the same synth. So this will trigger both of them. But if I go all the way over here and I click on, I'm clicking on this lowest C in this octave range on my MIDI controller, go down another octave, and it immediately starts triggering the samples for that. Another couple of cool features, I did this blank button up here is assigned to be a panic button. So you can assign your keyboard similarly to that. You can click map parameter and click a button on your synthesizer, and it'll map it directly to that. And then same thing here for your patch changes. You can come over here to patch, which actually I like to do that in here. I go to patch up, and click assign, and then I'll pick a button on my synthesizer, and it'll be that. And then patch down, click assign, do the same thing for a different button. And now when I go back into the edit mode, I can go up and back down as well, so that it completely controls all of my scene changes, and I don't have to use the directional arrow keys on the Mac itself. So that saves you a bit of time, and it makes it a lot easier for whoever's playing the synthesizer to use that. The last thing I wanted to show you was if you need to go into the sampler and adjust volume levels and stuff like that, which often we will need to do. It's a lot easier to go in, and you'll have a lot more autonomy to go in and control the individual sample volumes themselves versus just trying to control the general output here in the channel itself. So I usually tend to leave this at whatever attenuation the rest of the synthesizers seem to be at. That way you're getting a nice raw, same equal balance of volume coming out of the sound system, and you're not over pushing one instrument over the other. So in this channel right here, I'll go to, this is my sampler channel at the top of your show. I hover over where it says sampler, and I click right in the middle where it shows these two little dials, and then this opens up the actual sampler instrument. Under mapping, this will show me where all of the samples are loaded into. So for this one, it goes from C1 all the way up to B natural 1. And I can select all of this group or all of this group. And then the nice thing about this is from over here, I've got this little piano looking guy. And then I can come all the way over here to my list. And when I click on that list, it'll show me all of the samples that I've got loaded in here and their volumes as well. So I can just take, let's say that I, in general, want all of these samples to turn down in volume. So all I did was click one sample, drop down to the bottom, hold the shift button, click the bottom one, and it selected all of my samples. And I can come over here and click on one volume, and I can select a new volume for it. So if I want them all to go up, I can keep them all selected and then type in a new volume set for it. Or I can click one individual sample, scroll over, and if I only want to adjust one sample, I can click on volume here. Sorry, let's start over here. Click on one volume here and go -6. So now it's attenuated to peak at -6 decibels. Or I can go to 0 and it'll let it max out. It's a limiter right here, basically, is what this is. It's going to make sure that that sample doesn't surpass, 0 decibels on the fader, which you can also check over here on our sampler strip, where we hit that and see that we've got all of that kind of going together at the same time. All right. I'm trying to think if there's anything else here that we need to do with this. Looks like everything else on your file has pretty much been set up. Nothing else is needed for this. So I'm going to exit out of the actual instrument itself. If for some reason, I'll show you this too on the sampler. If for some reason you wish to move these around and make it, different or easier for the student to play, you can. That's pretty easy. You can go back into the sampler again, and under mapping, then you can come down here and select all of these files and move them at once wherever you want on the keyboard. So I'm in the file list, which is the Z over here on the far right hand side of the actual instrument itself. And then I've clicked the top sample, went down to the bottom, and then shift click all the way down to the bottom, and that selected all of these samples. And then I come back over here to this synthesizer, and then I can just drag these wherever I want to drag them. So let's say that I want to grab both group 1 and group 2. Give me both of these guys. And then I can select all of them that way as well. So just a click drag across. And now I want to move all of these samples simultaneously. So I can just click the furthest one in either side, and then just move them wherever I want to move them to. You do need to pay attention though too. You want to make sure that the velocity is not changing. So velocity 0 to 127 means that there's no velocity attributes to these at all. It just clicks and it'll play at the volume it's intended to be played at. I did have to stack a couple of samples because I wrote some samples to go simultaneously with these. So you're going to have to move those separate. So group 1 was all of these samples here in this list. Group 2 were samples that are stacked on top of notes so that they get triggered simultaneously. So I'm going to have to pull these over too. So I moved from C1 all the way to C2. So I'm going to have to do the same thing here, but I don't need to mess with the layout. So I went from C1 to C2. They're back here. They're both going to be triggered at the same time as these samples that lay on this C and this E. Okay, so it's pretty simple, pretty easy to maneuver. I'm just going to drag these back because this should be as close to correct as possible, just living on C1, and then same thing for these samples as well. So pull these back over to C1. Cool, and then it's back to normal. All right, so hopefully that answers most of the questions you've got. If you've got anything else for me, feel free to hit me up. Send me an email or send me a text or shoot me a phone call, and we'll be able to walk you through everything else. But like I said, the layout portion, super easy. And then the sample portion is the only part that gets a little more difficult, but even that, as long as you get familiarized with the sampler instrument, should be pretty easy on its own. All right, let me know if you need anything else, and happy practicing, happy MainStage.